Question number 5, the Honourable Pete Hodgson.
So my question is to the Minister of Internal Affairs and reads, can he confirm that as Minister of Internal Affairs he has met all of the requirements of a Minister of the Crown as set out under Conduct, Public Duty and Personal Interests in Part 2 of the Cabinet Manual?
The Honourable Richard Worth.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I confirm to the best of my knowledge that I meet the requirements set out in 2.58 of the Cabinet Manual.
The Honourable Pete Hodgson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why does he still own 5,000 shares in WSD Global Risks Ltd, a company substantially owned by Mr. Riaz Patel of the House of Patel, which company originates from India, trades in India and has a physical presence in India, and how does that reflect on his judgment?
The Honourable Dr Richard Worth.
Mr. Speaker, the shares in that company, which is a minimal holding, I'm not sure what the total capital of the company is, but it's a big number, are held by my family trust and are in the process of being sold. In fact, I had a discussion with the Secretary of the company about that issue yesterday.
The Honourable Pete Hodgson.
Why did he obtain these shares while he was a director of the company on the day before last year's general election, when most members of Parliament had other things on their minds, and did he pay for those shares?
The Honourable Dr Richard Worth.
I don't believe that the date that the member has offered is correct. That may be the date the shares were entered onto the register. And I did pay for the shares.
The Honourable Pete Hodgson.
To the is no, he bought them. Order. He bought them himself.
Order.
Is he, to the Minister?
Order.
Is he happy to rise to the challenge posed by the Leader of the Opposition yesterday that he place in the public arena receipts for his own costs of travel, accommodation and other requirements incurred on his recent trip to India?
The Honourable Dr Richard Worth.
I think that the member should accept the accuracy of the statements which I make in this Parliament. And the costs have been correctly identified and the detail published in the media.
The Honourable Pete Hodgson.
Is the Minister aware that WSBC, a company which the Director of the New Zealand Serious Fraud Office describes as an associated entity, was thrown out of the Cook Islands last week, and that last Friday the Minister of Finance for the Cook Islands issued a press statement praising the role of the Pacific Anti-Money Laundering Program, and how does that reflect on his judgment?
The Honourable Dr Richard Worth.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know of those matters. This is a different company. The company that I was involved with was WSD Global Risks Ltd, which is a New Zealand company.
The Honourable Pete Hodgson.
Why did he tamper with his own Wikipedia entry earlier this week, and does he intend to take the advice Wikipedia gave him yesterday afternoon that he should consult Wikipedia's conflict of interest guidelines?
Point of order, the Honourable Cherry Brownlee.
Mr. Speaker, I think while some of these questions do stray outside what might be normal in the circumstances, I know my colleague is keen to answer them, but for goodness sake, yesterday we had Mr Cunliffe over here getting upset about suggestions that he had been twittering on some site in cyberspace. Now, where on earth does this particular Wikipedia entry have anything to do with the primary question that's asked today?
Speaking of the point of order, the Honourable Dr Michael Cullen.
The primary question today is about the Cabinet Manual requirements in relation to conduct, public duty and personal interest. That is a very wide set of requirements upon ministers, and the supplementary question comes within that ambit, is not specifically related to the primary question to the matters of shareholding.
It is a difficult issue. Obviously, I do have to try and ensure questions fall within the area of ministerial responsibility and relate to the primary question. I do acknowledge the primary question is reasonably broad in terms of conduct under the requirements of the Cabinet Manual, but whether or not someone has altered what might be on, I mean, anyone, as I understand it, can seek to alter what's on Wikipedia, and I have some difficulty in believing that question falls within the standing orders. I invite so I'm not seen to be unfair in taking a question off the member. I invite him to reword his question to see if he can bring a question within reasonable standing order.
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister, can he recall that the Prime Minister had undisclosed shares in a railway company last year, some of which were also in a family trust, and that when confronted by that, the Prime Minister chose not to hide behind that particular veil? So why does he?
Order. 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 The dilemma is, I must say to the honourable member, the dilemma is that the Minister of Internal Affairs is not in any way responsible for what the Prime Minister may or may not have done. And that's the dilemma I have with that question. I accept the member is seriously trying to pursue a matter, and I don't want to unduly constrain that, but I feel that is not the Minister's responsibility, what the Prime Minister may have done. Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sort of slightly reluctant to challenge your ruling, but I ask you to consider this matter, and that is that the question was not asking the Minister to answer for the Prime Minister, but gave the Prime Minister as a very good example of proper transparency in these matters. And all that was being asked is whether this Minister is prepared to match the level of transparency that the Prime Minister has given and that ministers in the previous government were also expected to give.
Yeah. The Honourable Dr Michael
It would be appropriate if the member were allowed to rephrase the question and see whether he can bring it within your understanding.
I'll allow the member to do that. The Honourable Pete Hodgson.
Mr. Speaker, noting the Prime Minister's expectation on all ministers, does the Minister for Internal Affairs believe that he should follow the example given by the Prime Minister in respect of family trusts and not choose to hide behind that veil?
The Honourable Dr Richard Worth.
Mr. Speaker, there's nothing unusual about family trusts. If the member was to look at the Register of Pecuniary Interests, he would find that there were a significant number of members of Parliament who have trust arrangements. My recollection is that the former Prime Minister has such an arrangement. There's nothing inappropriate about a family trust.
Question number 6. Beg your pardon. Point of order, is it?
I have a point
of order. The Honourable Pete Hodgson.
I have a number of documents to table, and to assist the House, I've grouped them. The first set of documents are various share registry records and directors' records from the New Zealand Companies Office. I seek leave to table them.
Leave is sought to table those documents. Is there any objection? There is
Secondly,
none.
Mr. Speaker, there are assorted documents from court cases, including an affidavit, a court finding and commentary from the British Customs Intelligence. I seek leave to table those.
Leave is sought to table those documents. Is there any objection? There is none.
Mr. Speaker, I seek leave to table a press statement dated last Friday from the Office of the Deputy Prime Minister of the Cook Islands.
Leave is sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is none.
And finally, Mr. Speaker, I seek leave to table Mr. Worth's view of himself on Wikipedia and Wikipedia's comments to Mr. Worth in response.
Leave is sought to table comments from Wikipedia. Is there any objection to that? There appears to be none. Question.